Okie dokie, guys. It's been a while. And that's mostly because, well, I'm starting a new job, I've got engaged, and just a bunch of shit's happening in my life. But lately, I've been playing this game called Dead by Daylight, and it's been an absolute joy. Not only is this game an absolute dopamine rush, like just getting it straight injected into your brain, but it's also just been insanely tactical and interesting to learn. And since I've been enjoying the game so much, I thought now would be a great opportunity to make a tier list of JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven, baby! Woo! What, you thought I was going to be out here making serious content? Fuck no! I'm here to make stupid-ass videos about games that literally no one cares about. Because of course I would! Ha! Idiot! What, you thought I was actually smart? No, I don't play big boy games. I play little baby games for babies! Okay, let's tone it down a bit. All jokes aside, this game is probably one of my favorite fighting games for literally no reason. It is such an unbalanced and stupid mess that I really question every day why I enjoy this game so much. But, hell, I do, for no reason. And don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to make this game sound good. It's pretty unbalanced and pretty broken. But I just thought it'd be fun to make a tier list, just to talk about how terrible some of the characters are and how, like, broken and unfair some of the characters are. I really don't know. It's just one of those games that I really enjoy for no reason, and I love making tier lists, so I figured why not do that here? It's always been fun for me, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get into the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven. Very subjective and probably pretty wrong, but it's my experience, so fuck you. I'm the one making the video. If you want to argue with me, make your own channel, make your own video, tier list. So for me personally, I think that there are two worst characters in the game. But first we're going to talk about Poochie. Now that's probably weird to hear, but I'm talking about Whitesnake Poochie. And all the Eyes of Heaven fans nod in agreement. See, something about Whitesnake Poochie just it doesn't work, and I don't know what it is. So Poochie's entire role is to be a disabler, just kind of like taking away people's abilities, scrambling their control, stuff like that. But to do that, traditionally you would have to hit your opponent, and you literally never can half the time with this character. Combos half the time, they just don't connect for any reason whatsoever. Half of your moves barely deal damage, and whenever they actually take an ability away, like you're trying to do the entire match, you get hit once, drop the item, and they pick it up immediately. It's like such a useless stall tactic, and it never lasts long at all for actually taking away their ability. Not only does Poochie have poor damage and half of his moves barely connect, but he has a counter move that doesn't counter. I've tried using this move at the start of a combo, at the end of a combo, right as the person hits me, in the middle of their attack, supers, melee. It never works. It never actually counters. At least I've never gotten it to. And it's kind of ridiculous. Like, look at that. It says right there it counters, but even the EX version never works. Poochie has one thing, literally one thing going for him, and that's the fact that he has a transformation. When he hits half health, he gets, like, extra defense, but you also stand there long as hell with iframes, so that's kind of nice. But as soon as you exit that, you're back to being Poochie with a little more defense, and that's not good. So for me, all in all, that kind of just lands Poochie in the bottom of doo-doo caca pee-pee poo-poo tier. But there is another that kind of joins his rank as being just the worst character in the game. And it's this actual human gerbil right here, Koichi Hirose. God damn, look at him, he looks terrible. Now there is one strength to Koichi, and that's the fact that he looks absolutely goddamn feral. Like, he looks like he will jump out of the screen and rip out your friend's eyeball. Not to worry, though, because this character is the most situational and kind of useless character in the game. Now, as a character, he's actually pretty unique and fun to use, but he's just bad. First of all, he kind of has the same issue as Whitesnake, where a lot of his moves just don't connect. A bit less so. The main issue with me is that a lot of his moves don't really do anything in particular. Half of his moves are just like, oh, yeah, if you hit your opponent with this, they'll piss themselves and stumble for half a second. He has like maybe 3 total damaging moves, and every other one in every other form is just kind of a weird little buff or slight inconvenience. I will say in Act 1, he does have a move that he can use that's actually a support move, and you never see that in this game. He can, like, build people's gauges for them, but it's not really that much. And then the moves all have these weird little extra effects that do not matter at all. Like, it'll have an attack that's like, this move will slow your opponent down momentarily, but if you use it on sheer heart attack, it'll slow it down too. And it's like, why would I ever need this? It's so pointless. Or like, oh, this move does this effect, but Yukiko completely ignores it, which is kind of cute, it's kind of cool, but it's just weird. I don't know why they felt the need to make all these weird little abilities. And just, like, you have to switch between these 3 acts constantly to really utilize his full moveset. And even then, half of his moves have this weird extra effect where if you hold the stick in any direction for, like, range attacks, it just puts it on the ground. And it's like, you're always going to be moving the stick around because you want to be moving. So, like, that means if you want to use these as a zoning tool, you have to completely stop your character to use them. And not to mention, his combos are just weak, they're short, and they really just don't get the job done. This character, they tried something really cool, but it just didn't work. And it's honestly a shame, because he's really cool and he's really fun, but it just didn't work. We're now getting into characters that are almost out of the F tier, but still just not good. We have Rohan, who you're going to be seeing a lot of Part 4 characters in this these very low tiers. I don't know why any of them are so awful. But yeah, so Rohan is like Whitesnake Poochie. He's very much a disabling character, and he actually has some decent disabling abilities. The only issue is just that he can never get them to work most of the time. It's like Poochie, where half the time it just doesn't land, or half the time it just doesn't last nearly long enough, or the opponent can just run away. He's really kind of a zoner too. He has this move called Safety Lock, which is supposed to be used defensively, but it's not a bad trapping tool either. Like, just stand above a downed person, use Safety Lock just to get that little extra security. And he also has, like, kind of a knife throw like Diego, where if you tap triangle, you just throw some shit. It's a lot worse than Diego, and it does not do nearly as much damage, but it's at least a good keep-off-me tool. Overall, nothing too terrible, but he just has nothing going for him. Look at him! Oh, he's so stupid. There's no way this character could be good. That's what you're thinking. That's what you're thinking. And you'd be right. Shigechi is a weird utility zoning character. I'm not really sure what the hell he is. Basically, his entire moveset revolves around placing down harvests to upgrade your abilities, to make them stronger. Again, like Rohan, he doesn't really have anything bad. He has actually a really good tool that lets him not only attack opponents from across the map with an unblockable attack, which they can just kind of walk out of it, so whatever, but this attack is actually not bad, because if you buff it, you can actually gain benefits like increasing your gauges. Not by much, but it's still an increase, and you can actually gain health back. It's pretty interesting. His actual combo potential is pretty low, but you can get some decent debuffs that allow you to kind of like get in, get out pretty easy. And other than that, he really has like literally nothing special about him. He just kind of zones, and that's all you're ever going to see. But he's decent at what he does, and while he's going to get beat by almost every other character in the game, you can sometimes get sneaky and like kind of creep up in power on your opponents. You can run away, you can heal. He's actually not a bad character, and fun fact, he has a wall climb, which nobody uses in this game because it's such a dumb fucking ability. But yeah, that's all I really got for Shigechi.
Oh no! Our table! It's broken!
Next up, the first of D tier is Yukiko. This game really just hates part 4. I'm not really sure why, but almost all of them are very low tier, except for one, and we'll get to him later. But Yukiko is pretty not special. Her entire moveset is kind of jumbled together, and it feels like they were trying to do a bunch of different things. She feels like a grappler, but she's also kind of a zoner, but she's also really defensive, but also super offensive. She has hyper armor. She has unblockables. It kind of just feels like they were just like, oh yeah, this works, and just threw it on there. Kind of some like last minute ideas. Now as far as an actual complete character, her combos are pretty slow, but she can actually hit people from a deceptively long range, which is something I actually use a lot online. People don't expect you to actually hit them from as far away as you do, and when you do, it hurts them pretty bad. You can get some decent combos on Yukiko, especially if you're in dual attack mode, where you can actually get some pretty nasty chains going. Overall, she has like 2 good supers, which have EX versions, which is good, and 2 pretty useless supers, one of which being a teleport and the other basically being a counter that never hits when it needs to. She has a couple grappling moves, like I mentioned, which is, they're okay. The damage isn't amazing, but she does have one move where basically you can hit the opponent away, drag them closer like I'm about to do in this clip, and if you time it well, you can actually get some pretty decent capitalization on it. One of the big weaknesses of Yukiko is that if you get hit using a lot of these moves, it just straight up cancels them. And if she got hit, then it's just too bad, so sad, there's no recovery. Her trait sounds like it'd be really good, but it's kind of bad. Basically, all of her attacks are unblockable, kind of like Cars, but as a downside, she can't target people. So it's kind of like Josuke in a way, and she actually does have an after-death state, where she's completely unblockable, and she can't target, but she's kind of strong, it's just that she's unreliable in that state, and it also drains your stamina, so of course it's going to have a really long cooldown afterwards. Really the best thing about her is her ability to just keep opponents close when they're trying to run, which is pretty in character, but overall her moveset just feels kind of jumbled and not very focused on one sort of playstyle. But she's able to achieve more than you'd expect for as low tier as she is, especially in dual combo mode. You can get some seriously nasty little chains built up, but other than that, she really doesn't have outstanding damage or combo potential. She's just kind of an average character all around. And it makes me feel bad putting him this low, but next up on D tier, it's our Bubble Boy Caesar. Now, I want this character to be good, because he has a lot of really neat tools. He has a lot of defensive, little get close and you'll get burned kind of tools. He has some decent trap tools to kind of keep people off of you, and he has just really good zoning. He's a decent zoner, but the problem is he's not a good zoner. And therefore, not only is his damage and his zoning lacking, like look at these bubble cutters, they barely even tickle the opponent. That is 2 fully charged bubble cutters, and they didn't even like get him past that little tiny sliver of a health bar. It's kind of sad. Either way, he's fine, and that's it. Some of his zoning really doesn't work as intended. To use his bubble barrier, you basically have to be right on top of the opponent, because if you're not, it'll just kind of like pop before it even gets to them. And the one really bad part about him being a zoner is that he is a Zeppeli, he is a Hamon user, so that means he has to kind of take a couple seconds every now and then to charge his Hamon back up. He does get his abilities back pretty quickly, but as a downside, it does take a minute for him to actually build his Hamon back up. Which can be pretty bad if you're in a bit of a corner, or if you have someone really hard just charging at you the entire game. Because Caesar, unlike almost every other character in the game with a square combo, has, I would say, the worst square combo in the game. It takes him like a solid, probably second and a half to actually initiate the first hit of his combo, and you'll see that here maybe soon, but he's just bad. His most reliable thing he can do is tap his triangle button for a quick little kick, but using his square combo outside of any situation other than a gank is just straight up a hazard. His damage, especially for a zoner in this game, is really low, and it's a shame. I mean, watch this clip where I'm trying to use his square combo on this Joseph. He literally just ignores me and just keeps walking away because I can't hit him. It doesn't come out nearly fast enough. Now, Caesar, I'm sure, in the right circumstances, can get some pretty disgusting damage. But for the most part, I've just had zero luck with Caesar. I don't think I've ever won a single match, unless it was a person who just downloaded the game. He's just not good. He can't start a chain like most characters. He's just so bad. And it's like, you could see the potential to be better, and it's just upsetting, because he just misses so many of the marks that would make him a good zoning character. And if they made him more of a hybrid, like Lisa or maybe Stroheim, I think that'd be very fun. I think he'd be good, and he wouldn't be too broken, but he's just missing the oomph that he needs. And that's sad, because Caesar's a really cool character. He has some cool moves, and he's kind of just like a more zoning William Zeppeli, but he's just so much worse. Oh, and also, the bubble lens. This is a move that it's supposed to fire like a laser or something when you use it, when they get close. But watch what happens when I stack them. Because you can stack them pretty hard, actually. And not only does it not fire lasers, it doesn't actually hurt the opponent until they walk into them. And again, like all of his moves, the damage is minimal at best. And keep in mind, if you get hit, these bubble lenses immediately disappear. So, I just think if Caesar was a little better defensively, he could be good. But as he stands, he's just bad. Straight up bad. I genuinely had a hard time keeping Caesar out of the F tier. I genuinely thought for a long time that he was the worst character in the game, because his square combos are so bad, and he just doesn't have the zoning to make up for his lack of a square combo, like Calculate or something. He's just terrible, and it's such a shame, but in the right circumstance, he can most definitely shine. It's just a very rare circumstance. You can just tell that Fugo is a slimy fuck that deserves D tier, because they just gave him the worst special dual heat attack name of all time. Like, really, this is the best you could do? Okay, whatever you say. Other than being one of the least favorite characters of Part 5, he's also probably one of the worst characters out of the Part 5 crew, for the sole fact that every single one of his moves has a high chance of damaging him. Oh, and keep in mind, if he is on low health and gets hit with this, he can actually die. That being said, that goes for anyone else who has his poison, but it's actually fucking crazy that this can just straight up kill you. Most of the time, effects like this in the game that do damage over time, or like standing on the spikes, or just fire or hazards on some maps, will just bring you to 1 health and not kill you, but this straight up kills you if you're not careful, so keep this in mind if you're playing a low health Fugo. That being said, you are always going to want to be spamming these virus capsules on Fugo, because it's your only really reliable way of doing damage, so it's a really big risk-reward character. If you can consistently keep the virus on your opponent and avoid getting it yourself, you can get a pretty clean match, but that is actually much harder than it sounds to just stay away from your opponent, especially in this game. Not to mention, a lot of Fugo's specials are pretty hard to actually land. as you can see there from Bucciarati, you can just, like, punch it away. Like, you really won't take damage 90% of the time when Fugo's trying to attack you. To compensate for this, his EX moves actually have, like, a ridiculous amount of hyper armor, but, I mean, honestly, they recharge so often, or sorry, so not often, and his other moves are just so risky and not worth it, that you might as well just throw the capsules and then run away the entire match. It's really the only viable way to play Fugo, because anything else is so dangerous that it's just not worth it. Fugo, again, very big risk-reward character. The risk is so high, honestly, that you're doing, like, decent damage for so much of a price that it's just not worth it. And he has an ability that lets him waste 3 capsules to set a trap, which is probably the most useless ability ever. It's basically just begging for you to get poisoned, because that's pretty much the only thing that's going to result from this. Because, I mean, unless the opponent is blocking the whole time or something like that, I literally do not see a reason to use this ever. It's wasting more capsules when you could just, like, down them and then throw another capsule using, like, a quarter of the resources. It's just weird. It's just weird to me. But if you can keep the capsules consistent, keep yourself healthy, then it's pretty alright, but the damage you can take from these capsules is just ridiculous. Just keep in mind, your opponents are taking the same damage, and yeah, just stay safe with. And because we couldn't leave the D tier without including another Part 4 character, here is Akira. Now, Akira is part of a very interesting trend in this game of characters that are basically designed to be bad and good at the same time. And these are what I'm going to refer to as the transformation characters. Now, their entire ability is basically based around them being useless in one form and really strong in the other. And you're going to see this trend a couple times with some characters. And Akira is probably the most polarizing version of this. So basically, obviously, he has his Red Hot Chili Pepper form, which is the strong form. He has a meter that he has to charge in order to use it, and whenever he enters this form, depending on how high the meter is, he does a different amount of damage on his supers, and he gets some pretty crazy supers. First of all, he gets a really good punch rush. I think the EX version has hyper armor, but don't quote me on that. He has just a little jab that you're never going to use, and he has a move that literally just lets you grab the opponent and rip them across the map. It's really busted. This move is like the ultimate keep-away tool. And if you have people who like to really fight together, this can make it really hard for them to do just that. When you're playing Red Hot Chili Pepper, you do have a weird, like, alternate jump where you fly, but you're never going to use this. Here's the downside, though. If you lose this charge, you are effectively useless as a character. You can't use any specials. You can't use your triangle because, as you can see there, Red Hot Chili Pepper just fucking nuts on the ground and dies. And as you can see here, his square ability is completely useless. You play the guitar for a second and it charges your super meter, which is like, it doesn't really charge it that much. The only way you can replenish or bring back Red Hot Chili Peppers is to sort of just use his ability, which honestly, I've underestimated the charge rate a bit. You actually get it back pretty quickly, but at the same time, when you're in the middle of a fight, especially if both people are ganging up on you, it's very hard to actually build this back up. And unless you do build it back up, the only thing you have left is a dive kick, and it at least knocks people down instead of just making them stagger, so it's not just a complete death sentence. But if you don't have charge, you are effectively not even a playable character. And like I said, the charge really doesn't take that long to get back, as you'll see here in a second. I think I start. Yeah, see, I already got level 2 there. Like halfway, probably actually a quarter way through charge. So you can actually build it back up pretty quickly and be able to kind of surprise your opponent. But just know, if you're getting ganged up on, you're basically going to lose as Akira, because it's impossible to play Akira if you're getting ganged up on. you might as well just quit right there. Because essentially that means you have no time to charge unless you somehow down both opponents at the same time, which is very difficult in this game, especially for a character like Akira, who's such a single target guy. And if you, by some miracle, get one person down, the other one will just keep you from charging, and eventually you will lose your charge and you'll have nothing. So just keep that in mind. Be sure to have a really good ally, and yeah, just use Akira with great caution, because he's probably the worst transformation character in the game, but we'll get to some more later on.
Oh, you've had sex. Well, I've had enough!
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the lightning round. Now, there's a lot of crazy characters in this game, so for the ones with no particular importance, we're just gonna speedrun those bitches. So let's get the little middle of the C tier guys right out of the way, starting with Speedwagon, who despite being a fan favorite, has a pretty mediocre moveset, besides Ogre Street. Stroheim is pretty much only used for his Gatling gun, every other move is situational at best. Now, Joshu's actually a pretty great disabling character, but the rest of his moveset is lacking, just like his character arc. Now, Trish is pretty good defensively, but anybody only uses her for ground punishes. Whole Horse is just kind of okay at everything, which honestly kind of fits his character. Mirai is a fine character, but if you don't play her game, she's always going to lose. Insane Ability Recharge Time does not save Will Zeppeli from having half a usable moveset. Okuyasu feels like he should be a good character, but for some reason he's just kind of not. Anasui is fine as a rushdown, but not really good at anything else. Lisa is just kind of a better Will A. Zeppeli, honestly. And finally, Muhammad Avdol, who's good at trapping, and that's kind of it. And Hermes, who barely got out of the lightning round. Now, Hermes is a fine character. She really doesn't have a whole lot going on for her. But the few things she does have are pretty interesting and unique to her. She's kind of a trapper character, I guess. Or not really, she's more of a setup character. Basically, her entire moveset revolves around, I'm going to do this, and this is going to happen after. For example, Pull Off Stick is her circle ability. She can set down a stick, and once she uses it again, the stick will fly towards her and hit an opponent on the way back if it does. Or if you use Have Lance, you can actually hit the opponent, and if they get damaged, you can then use it again to dash towards them. And it's a pretty nifty way to kind of like play some mind games. Use an ability and start running away, see if they think you're going to dash back. It's kind of fun. Hermes' damage is a bit on the lower side, but honestly, it's not bad. Probably the biggest downside to her overall is the fact that her trait is just very risk-reward. She gains a pretty major damage buff, but at the cost of, if she gets hit by anything, and that includes, like, not even non-damaging pushback abilities, it deals a pretty hefty damage to Hermes herself. Like, look at the damage here. That's more than the hit that Pucci actually delivered. And keep in mind, that's the maximum buff. You can only buff it once for a little bit more damage rather than a whole lot more damage, but also keep in mind it does stagger you, which is pretty major, so just look out for that. Overall, Hermes is a pretty fun character to mess around with and kind of fuck with your opponent. And if you're looking for a new character to play who's not a complete top tier, then I would recommend Hermes. She's pretty fun, and she's actually pretty easy to use once you get to know her. Now, Vanilla Ice, other than being one of the most dummy-thick characters in the entire game, is pretty situational. And he's alright for the most part. If you can just rush down a person and just absolutely manhandle them, then you're going to go to town, which kind of goes for any character. But Vanilla Ice is an exception to this because he's actually pretty well made to just rush people down. His U-Foul Creature skill is one of the most notable ground punishes in the entire game. You can 3-stack this for some pretty major damage, especially in dual combo mode, and especially if you have a Dio partner and he dies. His other ability, which is Now I've Taken Their Blood or something like that. Now I've Taken Something. I'm not really sure what it is. It's a grab, and once you get the grab, you can drain the opponent's health And this is a huge piece of Vanilla Ice's moveset. First of all, really good for countering just constant dashing or hyper armor. Yeah, if the opponent has hyper armor, you can just completely negate it with this grab. Grabs are really powerful in this game for people who don't know that. And his ground punish is damaging, yes, but the ability to regain health whenever you want is super strong. And in the EX version, it's really a lot of health. Like, you'd be surprised how much health you get. Now, the elephant in the room for Vanilla Ice is that he has an ability that lets him transform into Cream. And this debatably makes him much, much worse, I would say. He gets some pretty good unblockable attacks, which are great against people who like to just spam guard or just playing a really defensive character, or even a ranged character. Vanilla Ice is actually, I found, pretty good at zoning, or anti-zoning. But his moveset's just fine. There's just not a lot to it. You just kind of, like, sit there floating around very, very slowly and not really doing much else. Cream is kind of a bad transformation. If it drained stamina a little slower and the movement speed was a little bit faster, I would say it's alright. But as is, it's just not good. And also, you lose some of your best abilities. You kind of just get the ability to, like, hit your opponent once, they're down, they take a hefty amount of damage, and then you're done with your transformation. A lot of the time, I only use it to use his triangle, or EX triangle, which is his ability to kind of just, like, teleport straight to the opponent and hit them. This works great from a down state, because the moment they get up, they're not able to block, so they have to jump, and that forces a reaction out of them. But Vanilla Ice, overall, he's kind of one note. You play Vanilla Ice once, you kind of get the full experience. He just kind of spams his abilities because his combos are insanely short and just bad. His abilities can be bad in the wrong hands, but you can actually get some pretty good damage, and again, the health regen is just huge for Vanilla Ice. It, like, really pulls together his moveset. And he may not be an amazing character, but he's a reliable character. He's very much like, again, you use him once, you've used him before. He's pretty simple to use. And that's just kind of Vanilla Ice in a nutshell. Now, Pet Shop, right? He's one of the most busted characters in the game, but he's also kind of just the worst character in the entire game. Pet Shop has some insanely high damage moves that have the ability to put on a lot of block pressure, but he also is kind of terrible in block pressure, and his damage is pretty mediocre for his owner. His abilities are absolutely busted and insanely high damage and really versatile, but his abilities are also almost never useful, and they just serve to just fill out his moveset and do really nothing. Pet Shop is fucking weird. Now, from what you could probably tell from that dumb little tangent, Pet Shop kind of varies on his actual skill or difficulty or actual viability, depending on who you ask. Pet Shop is a very polarizing and weird character. Everyone has a different opinion, everyone has a different idea of how he plays or where he plays best. He's weird. He plays completely different from every other character in the game because of the fact that he's kind of just flies around and shoots people, but in a very odd way. Pet Shop is very much a boy character, and it just kind of feels weird. Half his moveset is really versatile and absolutely high damage and kind of just works to make him better. But half his moveset is pretty dog shit. A lot of people say he's absolutely useless on the ground, while other people say he's really good defensively on the ground. He actually does really high damage. I think the big difference between Pet Shop players is if they know whether or not how to actually ground yourself, which is something I didn't know until pretty recently. And that's by holding the block button. Just a little tip for anybody playing Pet Shop out there, so you're not one of the people who thinks that there's no way to land and you just have to wait for your stamina to run out. Pet Shop without stamina is really just a death sentence. You're almost always going to get absolutely comboed every time, especially if the player knows how Pet Shop works and they're playing kind of cautiously on their approach. But But if you're in a really good team fight where you have a good teammate that can kind of keep the attention of both of the players, you can absolutely wreck house with Pet Shop. He has some insane ability to work in a team. And that is not to be at all underestimated. Like, Pet Shop is really strong in a team. It's just the matter of whether or not you have the ability to not only be backed up by your teammate, but back up your teammate. On his own, he's fine, I think. He really isn't that strong if you just kind of learn how to rush zoners. But yeah, he's fine as a zoner, and I'd say he does pretty well by himself. And from a character that depends on teamwork and good strategy to probably the least team-friendly character in the entire game, we got Yoshikage Kira. Holy shit. I cannot even describe to you the amount of matches I have lost because Akira on my team just screwed me over, whether it was completely by accident or due to negligence. Kira is a fine character. He is actually pretty good, I'd say. He has the ability, a lot of his moves, to lay down a bomb, whether it's on an object or onto a person, and by using his ability button, you can then trigger the bomb, and it does a lot of damage, like a really good amount of damage. The problem with this bomb is, if you're not careful, you can very easily damage yourself, your teammates, and every other effect of the bomb affects both you and your teammates. Any knockback, any stun. So guys, if you're playing Kira in a team fight, please, for the love of God, think about your bombs before you use them, because these bombs have the ability to royally screw over both you and your teammates. If your teammate's in the middle of a really good combo, they're about to use their super, and then you use their bomb, you completely ruin it. You completely ruin any chance of them hitting that super. You absolutely negate any progress they made on getting that opponent down to that health, and you just, did a little bit of damage? Maybe quarter health damage on that bomb. His sheer heart attack ability is pretty good at just helping him save himself. Like, say you're in the middle of a combo, sheer heart attack rolls by after you get knocked down, knocks down the opponent, lets you get up. But that's about it. Sheer heart attack isn't good for much else other than forcing the opponent to, like, jump or something. I would say Kira would probably be a tier or two higher if it wasn't for the fact that he was so easy for him to damage both himself and his teammate. He's kind of just a better Fugo with the fact that he can just kind of avoid the actual self-damage a bit at the cost of very easily hurting his opponent. And it's honestly harder than you would think to try and hurt your opponent, but if you do, it's just don't. Just don't. If you don't know how to be more aware of your bombs and how to be more safe, then just don't play Kira, because you're going to screw some people over, and you're not really going to be doing that well for yourself. I will say he has a good ground punish that a lot of people like to use. I don't know how actually good it is, because I've never really used Kira online, but it's pretty high damage from what I remember, especially if you're in dual combo mode. You can get some nasty stuff. But overall, he has high damage and not much else. His counter is pretty bad from what I remember, and there's just not a whole lot to him. He's just kind of a bomb guy, and that's really it. Just be careful if you're on a team, because you don't want to be that guy, you know?
What is this? It's a meme, Batman.
Now, first off in our B tier is Anasui, which I feel like a lot of people rank him way higher. Maybe I'm just underestimating him. I don't know. But he just seems like he's good to me, not exactly amazing. Now, unlike a lot of the characters so far, I've actually used Anasui online a couple times, and I gotta say, a lot of his moves feel kind of situational, but they're pretty good. His actual damage output is pretty decent, although he's not really able to combo a lot of his abilities together, other than the obvious. Like I said, his damage is pretty good, and he has some unique tools that make him stand out from the cast. For example, if you hit an opponent with and release, then if they or an ally gets near each other, the two of them will receive knockback and staggering, which is really nice for You know, if you're getting double teamed, it's just a nice little tool. You actually have an ability, as Anasui called, I dove into your body, and it gives you the ability to buff an ally, granting them hyper armor and dealing that damage to you in white health, which is interesting, because that basically just allows your ally another chance to get a combo, and it only disables only either after a certain amount of time or once that ally gets hit. During this time, you're not going to be able to use any of your abilities or really any combos, but the ability to just give your ally hyper armor is really strong. It's not even like hyper armor on a move, it's just passive hyper armor, which is insane. And really good, especially if you're friends with a rushdowner or something like that, or even a zoner. It just gives them the opportunity to get an attack in and really just stop them. His other abilities are just kind of standard. He has a rushing move where he runs straight at the person. He has a combo ender, which bumps them up into the air. He's just a pretty good character. He doesn't have any bad tools, but none of them are exactly amazing either. Well, some of them are, but most of them are not. Most of them are just kind of, you do this and that's it. They're not really like insane abilities. It's just like, oh, you do damage or you hit the opponent. Again, pretty good team utility, but other than that, he really doesn't have an insane amount of stuff going on. He's just a good ally, and he's just a good character, so I would recommend him any day. Another probably polarizing pick for this lowdown is Polnareff. And a lot of people, I think, underestimate Polnareff. It's kind of the opposite situation of Anasui. Basically, Polnareff's entire thing is that he just kind of is an everyman. He has zoning, he has a really good rushing ability, he has some really good combos, and his trait only exemplifies that. It just kind of triples the amount of whatever he's doing. So say he's using his deflect, it summons 3 silver chariots to deflect at a wider range. If he's using his rush combo, then he is getting more silver chariots to attack. If he's zoning, he gets more zones. It's pretty self-explanatory, and his moveset is kind of scattered, but it helps him do a lot. Now, I will say, his anti-zoning tool, secret weapon, I think, no, right back at you, that's right, is unreliable. A lot of the time, it's not actually going to send the projectile back at the target. That is, if you can even deflect it, because a lot of the time it just doesn't want to work for some reason. Either you use it way too early, or the zone just goes through for no reason, or you just sit there like an idiot and the opponent slowly walks around and hits you anyways. He's not the best anti-zoner, especially with that specific tool being completely designated to it. But he's pretty good at just about everything else. He's just a very much average character at everything. His trait is pretty decent, but again, it comes at a pretty hefty cost. He gains the ability to, like I said, triple everything, but it drains your stamina. And after you use it, then you go back to normal, and you actually have a pretty long cooldown period, and especially online, this is really bad, because people can really capitalize it with the terrible connection issues. Overall, like I said, he just kind of does everything alright, and he's not really particularly amazing at anything. I will say, his secret weapon zone tool is absolutely ridiculous sometimes. Say it misses. It didn't miss. What does that mean? I don't know, but sometimes it just hits you. It ricochets, and it ricochets mostly in your direction. Sometimes it goes complete opposite direction and gets lost. Sometimes every little bump makes it fly towards you. It's pretty, not situational, but it's very RNG, the zoning tool. And honestly, half the time, it just depends on whether it feels like zoning towards the target, or, sorry, ricocheting towards the target. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't, and that's just kind of how the game goes for a lot of abilities. Overall, though, he's actually a really reliable zoner if you want to be an asshole and play Polnareff like that, but he's also just really good combo starter, but he's not amazing at anything. And that's why I think he's stuck in B tier. Again, a lot of people really underestimate Polnareff, but I think he's alright. and he definitely deserves more credit. And now to round off the hot take triad in B tier, Diavolo. Now, a lot of people are probably going to disagree with this one because especially newer players will tell you that Diavolo is an A tier or even S tier, but that is not exactly true in my opinion. Yes, his combo tools are very strong. He's very good at just getting these insanely long combos for very, very little work. But Diavolo still has a lot of weaknesses. For example, if you're just good defensively, a lot of the time you can kind of go around a lot of the difficulty in fighting Diavolo. He has a lot of very strong unblockable tools, but if you're just very careful with your dashing, very careful just in general, you can sidestep a lot of his stuff. Especially his big unblockable grabble, which is probably one of the biggest complaints people have about Diavolo. It's a very strong combo tool, especially in bad connection, and there's a lot of times where playing against Diavolo, you really just can't do anything because you're just in that connection, there's not a lot you can do. His ability's pretty alright, his trait is alright. He has the ability to basically go into the King Crimson time skip for as long as he wants, or well, 10 seconds, which is, in a game like this, as long as he wants, basically. And he can launch an attack from there whenever he wants. And it's pretty strong just being able to wait and just your opponent not knowing when you're going to attack. It's really strong. He also has some good defensive abilities like Eulogy, which gives him the ability to dodge an attack and leap towards you. And then such futility is like a counter, but it only works sometimes. I'm not sure why. Diavolo's biggest weakness for me is that he can't dash mid-combo into another combo like a lot of characters can. That's a big tech in this game, being able to go from like a square combo before the ability into just being able to dash and then start another combo. Diavolo cannot do that, and that I think is the reason why his abilities are so easy to chain together, is because he doesn't have the same tech as everyone else. But he's still pretty strong. I'd say we're getting to like some pretty good characters here, but at the same time, I feel like once you learn how to play defensively, you'll do okay against Diavolo. He's not easy by any means, but you'll do fine against a Diavolo if you know how to play defensively, or if you're just playing a hyper-defensive character like Iggy or Wham. But honestly, it really just depends on the connection with this guy. You could get absolutely dogshit connection and be able to just not do anything the entire match, or you could get a really good connection and you could actually stomp. But it just depends, honestly. He's such a mixed bag, and it's all up to the luck of the draw by that point. Next up on our list is sort of the step up from Akira, and that's Endul. Endul is a really good keep-away character, one of the better transformation characters for sure, and honestly, one of the best supports in the game. If you're running a 1v1 and you have AI support, 90% of the time, if someone's really sweaty or try-hard, you're going to find them using Endul, if not Weather Report, but we'll get to that motherfucker here in a minute. Endul is really good as a character, though. He has a standing and a sitting mode, and both have pretty good abilities, although the sitting mode is obviously much, much better. So for standing mode, you can't lock on, but you can still kind of flail to get enemies off of you, and if you do that, then you actually do have a pretty good defense, especially if you spam triangle. If you can hit the opponent, it'll knock them pretty far back and you can get some good distance. If you do manage to get into sitting position, you can get some pretty nasty combos and stuff started. The square move, I can't quite remember what it's called, is one of the deadlier moves he has, and it's really good for crowd control. If you're getting rushed by two people, you can just pop that right next to you, and they will have no idea what to do. His other moves that allow him to teleport directly to people, his circle move, which lets him defend himself when he's in standing, which is really good. And he just has actually really high damage, really good range on a lot of his attacks from Geb himself. The only issue is the same issue that every transformation character has, where if you get caught away from your summon, then you really get caught off guard and you get comboed into death, you know? Like, if you are not in your transformation, you're just bad. And you're severely handicapped. Not a joke on the fact that he's blind, you're literally just doing worse. The transformation is much better than Akira's, though, so I think it makes up for it. There's a lot less downsides. Instead of having to charge a meter all the time, it just drains your stamina, which a lot of abilities in this game drain stamina. And the fact that you actually do have some pretty decent defense with his circle move while standing means that you do get to defend yourself fairly well. So keep that in mind. But for the most part, you're going to want to be sitting. You're going to want to be... It's kind of like Pet Shop, where you should be letting your ally do most of the heavy lifting while you're just packing on the damage from afar. And if you have some really stupid opponents, then they'll leave you alone. They'll try to double team the partner of yours, and yeah. But for the most part, it's pretty standard for a transformation character. There's not really a whole lot to say. It's just, you know, you transform, you sit in the back of the map, and you spam for a while. Except Enduel just does it better than most people. But there is one transformation character that sits above him at least a little bit, but we'll get to him later. And by later, I mean right now, because apparently I don't know how to anticipate when I'm video editing. It's Narancia. I think he's personally better than Enduel, though you're never going to see him nearly as much because his AI is absolutely terrible. For me personally, I think Narancia's only better because with Enduel he does high damage, but he can only get like a couple hits before he has to stop. Whereas Narancia is like a combo beast, especially in dual combo mode. If you're out of low bomber mode and you're just whipping shit out with Narancia, I mean, look at this combo, right? It's out of low bomber, and I am doing actually a pretty decent amount of damage, like way more than you'd expect from Narancia, right? A lot of people don't use him, and I think that's just because he's not, you know, top tier. Same with a lot of these characters, just because they don't have like one really busted quality, a lot of people don't play them. But Narancia's actually pretty competent outside of his transformation, unlike Enduel or Akira. He actually has some pretty decent square combos, some really good moves or abilities outside of his combos. And honestly, his damage is alright. Like, his damage isn't amazing, it's no Jonathan, but he can pull off some pretty good damage, and like I said, especially in dual combo mode, you can get some disgusting stuff. For the most part, though, play Narancia like you do every other transformation character. Sit in the back of the map, spam your projectiles, and just kind of wait for your partner to die so you can lose, probably. But Narancia's not bad, like I said. He has really good projectile game. Some of his abilities are kind of He has one where he throws a bunch of fire around, but unlike Poochie, it doesn't stagger or anything. It just kind of, like, damages them a little bit. His combo under in low bomber mode is actually one of his worst moves. He just kind of, like, does a little shooty shoot, and then he flips, and then he keeps on shooting, and it almost never actually capitalizes on that. It almost always misses the second hit, and you'll be stuck there because you can't cancel it out. It's just awful. I'm not a fan. I will say his little bomber plays very similarly to like Baby's First Pet Shop. It's not quite as hard to use. And you have the option of just playing Narancia as he is, and that's very viable actually. You'd be surprised how well you can do with just Narancia not using his ability. One piece of advice: don't stay in either form for too long, because if you switch often, I think it can capitalize on the fact that you have a very wide variety of abilities that can be very helpful. Just, you know, don't rely on one form or the other too much, because there's a lot of unused potential here, I think. And I think that if people started using Narancia more, people could find some crazy shit you could do with him, because he's strong in the right hands, or in the right circumstances. He can be really, really strong. Take this with a grain of salt, though. I've only used Narancia online to absolute failure, but that's because I keep getting paired up against people that just use meta characters. Also, be wary, because Narancia has probably one of the most annoying voices in the entire game. That's higher pitched than most of the women. Shut up! And, wow, we actually just made it to our first Joestar. That's pretty exciting. Here we have the resident Diaper Booty King and absolute Chad Johnny Joestar. He's a complete zoning character. He really can't do much else other than zone. If you try to do anything else, it's a massive mistake. And, okay, why is that dinosaur trying so hard to be Michael Jackson? Like, what the hell is going on here? Like I said, this game is insanely buggy and dumb, and, you know, that's kind of half the fun. But on to the actual character. We're talking about Johnny Joestar. He is a straight-up zoner. Like, he really can't do much else other than zoning. That's really it. He does have a few, like, get off me tools on his horse and on the ground, but they're basically useless in most any situation. And speaking of on the ground and on the horse, yeah, he can change forms between, you know, on the ground and on the horse. Both have their benefits. Being on the horse gives you more powerful attacks and more attacks to actually use, whereas being on the ground gives you the ability to recover nails faster and, you know, such and such. Johnny does have a wide variety of tools. Some of his moves help him ground punish really well. Some of them are instant combo starters that deal an insane amount of damage. But for the most part, you're just going to be waiting till you have dual combo mode so you can spam nail bullets, because once you get dual combo mode, you can absolutely shred your opponents apart. And I mean, like, taking away full health bars kind of shredding. If Johnny had this power all the time, he'd be an easy S tier, but as is, he's just alright, you know? He's doing fine. He's not doing bad by any means, and his damage is, yes, pretty insane when he's in dual combo mode, but then again, so is everyone else's, and it's not enough to be comparable to the other people in S tier. So we're dropping him down to B not only because his damage is pretty situational, but because his form changes kind of disable his ability to be a full character. Man, I really need to stop saying disabled at the wrong time, huh?
Come on, guys, please. I'm just trying to make some cheap jokes here. I'm really struggling here. I'm just trying to work all these jobs. Please, YouTube, don't take away my channel.
But yeah, Johnny's probably one of the least balanced characters in the game, in the sense of you either doing really good or really terribly, depending on how much pressure your opponent's putting on you, or how good at anti-zoning they are. It really depends, but Johnny isn't the best zoner out there. We'll get to them in a minute. But yeah, he's still doing alright, and he can put forth a lot of damage, or he could just flop the entire match. But for the most part, he's a consistently good character with some decent tools and the ability to really just screw people over if you get in the right situation. Now, sadly, I'm going to have to cut this first video short because Share Factory kind of sucks, and they only let you record up to 60 minutes of footage per project. So we're just going to cut it off here and upload the second part of the JoJo's Bizarre Adventure Eyes of Heaven tier list as soon as possible. I'll hopefully be able to do it by the time I leave, but we'll see what happens. Either way, thank you for watching, and part 2 will be out very soon.